But if this is an act, Mia, I don't think I'm capable of pretending anymore.
Sometimes the best stories start with the worst ideas. Ethan Pierce, billionaire CEO freshly recovered from financial ruin, decided he wasn't going alone to his ex-fiancee's wedding, the one who abandoned him when he lost everything. He expected a maid in a gray uniform pretending to be his girlfriend for $5,000. What he didn't expect was the woman in an emerald dress descending the stairs like she'd walked out of a dream he didn't even know he had. Mia Turner walked into the room, and Ethan forgot to breathe. The problem: it was supposed to be just pretend, but you don't fake what you feel when you finally see. Chapter 1. The Proposal and the Shopping.
I just need you to pretend, but what if this changes everything?
The morning started like every other morning for the past 2 years. I woke up at 6, showered in record time, pulled my brown hair into the tightest bun possible because loose strands are the enemy of efficiency, and put on my gray uniform that probably should have a dramatic name like 50 Shades of Professional Invisibility. I went down to the Pierce Mansion kitchen at 6:30 sharp, greeted Mr. Chen with a genuine smile, because this man is basically my mentor and substitute father figure, and prepared coffee exactly how Mr. Pierce likes it. Strong, no sugar, with that perfect foam that took 3 months to master when I started working here. At 7 o'clock, I walked into the dining room with the tray, impeccable posture, and that neutral expression I'd perfected over time. Ethan Pierce was there, as always, reading the financial newspaper with that intense concentration that made a crease appear between his eyebrows. A coffee, just how you like it. The meeting with investors at 10 has been confirmed, and Mr. Chen left the documents in the library, I announced as I placed the cup beside him, careful not to interrupt his reading too abruptly. He didn't even look up from the newspaper. Thank you, Mia. Did you cancel my Thursday lunch like I asked? Canceled and let them know you'd reschedule personally once you had a better date, I responded with automatic efficiency, because after 2 years you kind of develop a mental manual of responses for every situation. Efficient as always, he murmured, turning the page with that casual movement of someone used to having everything work perfectly around him. It's my job, Mr. Pierce. Do you need anything else? I asked, already kind of knowing the answer because this conversation was practically a script we repeated every morning. Not for now. And so I left the room, silent as always, invisible as always, efficient as always. The irony of being so good at being ignored that it became my trademark wasn't lost on me. But hey, the salary paid the bills, and there was still enough left to help my mom and my sister. Mission accomplished. Mr. Chen entered the room right after I left. I was arranging the hallway flowers when I heard his voice through the half-open door. Miss Mia is a rare gem, Mr. Chen said in that tone of wisdom he always used when trying to make Ethan pay attention to something important. Yes, she's good at what she does, Ethan responded distractedly, probably still absorbed in the newspaper. Young Ethan, sometimes the best things are so close we don't see them, Mr. Chen continued, and I could practically see the contemplative expression on his face. What are you talking about? The confusion was evident in Ethan's voice. Old man's thoughts. Ignore me. I rolled my eyes and continued with the flowers. Mr. Chen and his cryptic messages. One of these days I was going to figure out what went through that man's head. The afternoon brought the first deviation from the normal routine. I was in the kitchen when I heard the mailman deliver mail. Mr. Chen picked up the elegant envelope and took it straight to Ethan's office. Minutes later, I heard a muffled sound of paper being crumpled. I continued my work, because rule number 1 of being a good employee is knowing when not to intrude, but my curiosity was definitely poking at my concentration with a sharp stick. When I brought him tea later, I noticed the envelope on the desk. Elegant wedding, written in gold letters. Victoria Kane and Richard Thornton have the honor of inviting. Wedding in 10 days. Ridiculously fancy venue. The expression on his face as he looked at that invitation was a mix of anger, pain, and something that looked dangerously close to vindictive determination. Suddenly, he got very quiet, and I knew, with that strange instinct you develop working for someone for so long, that he was remembering. And then I saw it happen. His eyes became distant, lost somewhere in the past. 2 years ago, when everything was falling apart. I wasn't there that specific day, but Mr. Chen told me the story once, late at night, when he was feeling particularly reflective. Victoria Kane, beautiful as a postcard and cold as ice when it suited her, looking at Ethan with disdain as she removed her engagement ring. You're bankrupt, Ethan. I didn't sign up to be poor, she'd said, throwing the ring on the table like it was trash. Simple as that. No remorse or any trace of compassion. Just a cold statement that he no longer served her purposes. Ethan blinked, returning to the present. He picked up the crumpled invitation, smoothed it with his hands as if he could undo the impulse of anger, and placed it back on the desk with excessive care. She's got nerve, he murmured to himself, and there was something in his voice that made me want to say something comforting. But I didn't. It wasn't my place. So I just left the tea, asked if he needed anything else, received the usual, "No, thank you," and left. That night, Ethan went to a bar. I know because I heard him tell the driver the address. What I didn't know was that he was about to have the craziest idea of his life. But Sullivan's was the kind of upscale bar where rich men go to pretend they're normal people drinking expensive whiskey. Ethan sat at the counter, ordered a double shot of 18-year-old Scotch whiskey, and stared at the amber liquid as if it contained the answers to all the universe's problems. "Man, you've got that. I made a stupid decision. Look," a familiar voice said beside him. Noah Fitzgerald, lawyer, Ethan's best friend since college, and the only person in the world who had permission to talk to him that way, sat on the stool next to him and ordered the same thing. "Victoria's getting married," Ethan said bluntly. "I know, saw it in the paper, and you're not walking into that trap, are you?" Noah asked, knowing his friend well enough to know exactly where this conversation was going. "I need to go. I'm an investor in the groom's company," Ethan explained, taking a sip of the whiskey. "So go, but going alone shows weakness." Noah knew the game, knew Victoria. "Exactly. I need a date. Call Melissa, or Sarah, or that blonde from the charity event last month," Noah suggested, making a mental list of the obvious options. "They all know Victoria. It'll turn into a circus." Ethan shook his head, dismissing each suggestion before Noah even finished. "And then hire a professional escort. I know there are discreet agencies for that kind of thing," Noah offered, always practical. Ethan fell silent, considering, "No, it needs to seem real, natural. Victoria will notice if it's someone hired." "So, who do you know who's trustworthy and Victoria doesn't know?" Noah asked, genuinely curious about how Ethan was going to solve this impossible dilemma. The silence stretched. Ethan looked at his glass, then at the ceiling. Then, as if the words were being pulled from him against his will, he murmured, "My maid." Noah almost spit out his whiskey. "MIA? Ethan, she's your employee." "Exactly. Victoria's never seen her. Mia is discreet, reliable, efficient." Ethan was clearly trying to convince himself as much as his friend. "And you think she'll agree?" Noah asked, because that was the obvious question Ethan was avoiding. "If I pay well, maybe." There was a hesitation in his voice that Noah knew well. "You're crazy," Noah declared, shaking his head in disbelief. "Probably," Ethan agreed, and downed the rest of the whiskey in one gulp. The next day, Ethan was acting strange. Not obviously strange, because the man had the self-control of a Buddhist monk, but strange in a way that someone who spends all day in the same house as him could notice. More tense, more distracted, staring at nothing with that expression of someone plotting something potentially questionable. When he called me into the living room late in the afternoon, my first thought was that I'd done something wrong. My second thought was that maybe he'd finally noticed that I'd reorganized his whiskey shelf by quality order instead of alphabetical order, because the alphabetical order was offending my soul. "Mia, can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, and there was something in his voice that wasn't exactly nervousness, but was definitely discomfort. I put down the books I was organizing and turned to him with my best professional expression. "Of course, Mr. Pierce. Is there a problem?" "There's no problem. It's more of a proposal." He ran his hand through his dark hair in a way that suggested this conversation was going to be as comfortable as wearing shoes 2 sizes too small. "Work proposal?" I asked, because my brain was still in normal professional mode and hadn't gotten to "your boss is going to make an absolutely crazy request" mode. "Sort of, but..." He paused, and I swear I saw a flash of embarrassment cross those gray-blue eyes before he composed himself. "I need a date for an event on Saturday." I blinked, processed, responded, "Social event. I can organize a list of female contacts if you'd like. I'm sure that..." "No," he cut me off, and then dropped the bomb like he was ripping off a Band-Aid. "I want you to be my date." The silence that followed was so dense, I could feel the weight of it on my shoulders. My brain did that thing where it shuts down and reboots, like when the computer freezes and you need to press Ctrl+Alt to delete. "Me," was all I could say, and mentally congratulated myself on the impressive eloquence. "Yes, it's my ex-fiancé's wedding and I can't show up alone," he explained, and there was a quick vulnerability in his voice that disappeared almost the same second it appeared. My brain was juggling this information. And why me, specifically, Mr. Pierce? "Because you're trustworthy, discreet, and Victoria doesn't know you, so there won't be any drama." He said this as if it were the most logical thing in the world, as if asking your housekeeper to pretend to be your girlfriend was a normal business transaction. And look, maybe for billionaires it is. What do I know? "I understand the logic," I responded slowly, because my brain was still processing. "But Mr. Pierce, I'm your employee, not a social escort. I know, and I know it's inappropriate to ask this, but he paused, and then played the card that changed everything. I'll pay $5,000 for the night. My heart literally skipped a beat. The air left my lungs like someone had punched me. $5,000. $5,000. The exact amount, down to the last cent, that I needed to pay off my mother's hospital bill after she had a stroke last month. That's a lot of money, I managed to say, and my voice came out rougher than I intended. For you to pretend to be my girlfriend for a few hours. Yes, he confirmed, observing my reaction with that intensity he used in business meetings. My practical brain kicked in, doing quick calculations, and then everything goes back to normal. Professionally, I mean, exactly. No one needs to know complete professionalism, he assured, and I could see he'd really thought this through. I should refuse. I had 1,000 reasons to refuse. Pride, dignity, the fact that this was objectively a crazy idea worthy of a bad movie script. But then I thought about my mother in the hospital, about my sister Ava needing college tuition, about the bills piling up while my salary evaporated every month, and I thought about Victoria Kane, the woman who'd abandoned this man when he needed support most, now rubbing her superficial happiness in his face. Maybe, just maybe, I could do a good deed and solve my financial problems at the same time. Karma, universe, fate, whatever it was giving me a strange opportunity, and I'd be an idiot not to take it. I accept, I heard my voice say before my common sense could object, but with clear conditions. The relief on his face was almost comical, like he expected me to run away screaming, which are, and then my practical, organized personality took over, because if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. First, payment up front. Second, written contract specifying it's a one-time job. Third, no one in the house can know, except Mr. Chen if absolutely necessary. Fourth, you provide appropriate clothing because I definitely don't have anything suitable for a fancy manipulative ex-fiancé wedding in my wardrobe. He blinked, processing my list of demands, and I swear I saw something like admiration cross his face. I agree to everything. I'll pay for the dress too. That's not necessary. I started to protest automatically, because accepting money was embarrassing enough, but he cut me off with that firm CEO voice accustomed to making decisions. It is necessary. You're doing this to help me. The least I can do is make sure you have appropriate clothing for the role. Then, thank you, I murmured, because arguing with Ethan Pierce when he decided something was as productive as arguing with a reinforced concrete wall. When are we going shopping? Does tomorrow work? I need a new suit too, he said, and there was something almost normal about this conversation, as if we were planning something mundane instead of a fake girlfriend operation worthy of a romantic comedy. And tomorrow I have the afternoon off. It can be after lunch, I confirmed, my mental agenda already reorganizing commitments and inventing plausible excuses for anyone who asked. Perfect. I'll pick you up at noon. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Pierce? I returned to professional mode automatically, because my brain needed something familiar to hold on to before starting to have a complete breakdown. No, thank you for accepting. And there was genuine sincerity in his voice that made something strange happen in my chest, like butterflies having a rave. It's well-paid work, Mr. Pierce. Nothing to thank me for, I responded, keeping my tone neutral as if we were discussing library organization and not a bizarre, fake relationship agreement, and left the room with the same efficiency as always. But inside I was like those cartoons where the character is calm on the outside, but having a complete breakdown on the inside, with alarms ringing and people running in panic. As soon as I got to my room, small but comfortable in the back of the mansion, I grabbed my phone with slightly trembling hands and called Ava before my brain exploded with the insanity of what I'd just accepted. Hi sis, what's new? My sister's cheerful voice was exactly what I needed, like an anchor for my sanity. I got the money for the hospital, I announced bluntly, because with Ava beating around the bush never worked. Her scream almost perforated my eardrum, and probably scared the neighborhood dogs. Seriously, how? Mr. Pierce offered me well-paid extra work, I explained, technically not lying, but definitely omitting crucial details that would make my sister have an attack. What kind of extra work? Ava asked in that suspicious tone that younger sisters master perfectly when they sense you're hiding something big. Nothing inappropriate, I assured quickly, because knowing Ava, she was already imagining scenarios worthy of a soap opera. When I just need to accompany him to a social event as a fake girlfriend. The silence that followed was so absolute that for a second I thought the call had dropped, or that Ava had fainted from shock. Then she exploded with the subtlety of fireworks. This is literally movie stuff. Mia, you're inside a romance. Like those books you hide but I know you read. Don't be ridiculous. I rolled my eyes even though she couldn't see, and completely ignored the part about the books because she didn't need to know about my hidden romance novel collection. It's work. He pays. I pretend. It's over. Simple and straightforward like a bank transaction. And you don't feel anything for him. You've worked there for 2 years. 2 years. Mia! Her voice carried that mix of disbelief and excitement that only sisters can pull off, and that's simultaneously annoying and comforting. He's my boss. Ava. I respect him professionally. Nothing more than that, I responded, and it even sounded convincing if you ignored the fact that my heart had inexplicably accelerated when he said I was important. But that was just adrenaline from the situation, physiological stress response, basic science. Mia, are you blind or in acute denial? Ava asked with that irritating wisdom of someone who's 19 and thinks they know everything about life and love. Neither. I'm realistic and practical. Now I need to sleep. Tomorrow we're going clothes shopping and I need to be rested. I tried to end the conversation before she started making deep psychological analyses based on TV shows. Clothes shopping with him. That's literally a date. A date. Dating. Romance. It's a professional purchase, Ava. Good night. I hung up before she could continue, because if I let her, she'd spend the whole night creating romantic theories and was probably already planning our imaginary wedding. I lay in bed, looking at the white ceiling and trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. $5,000 to pretend to be my boss's girlfriend for a few hours. It was so absurd it seemed like a bad movie script. One of those you watch and think, this would never happen in real life. Except it was happening. In my life, which had apparently become stranger than fiction. It's just work, I murmured to myself in the dark, trying to calm my heart that insisted on doing unnecessary acrobatics. Just well-paid one-time work. But when I closed my eyes, all I could see was the expression on Ethan's face when he said I was important, the quick vulnerability in his eyes when he mentioned Victoria, and the way he'd looked at me when I accepted to help him, as if I'd just saved his life instead of just agreeing to a bizarre arrangement. And my heart, that absolute traitor, accelerated again. Strange, I whispered in the darkness, trying to categorize this feeling as anything except what I suspected it was, and forced my brain to shut down before it started asking questions I definitely wasn't ready to answer. Tomorrow would be an interesting day, and by interesting, I meant potentially disastrous in ways I couldn't even imagine yet. But hey, $5,000, right? Totally worth any future embarrassment and any questioning about my feelings that were definitely just professional and nothing more. At least that's what I was trying to convince myself as sleep finally came, bringing confused dreams about expensive dresses, gray-blue eyes that seemed to see through me, and a strange feeling in my chest that I refused to name. Tomorrow, shopping. With Ethan Pierce, my boss, to buy clothes to pretend to be his girlfriend. My life had officially become weirder than a Mexican soap opera. Chapter 2. The shopping afternoon.
This was supposed to be just clothes, so why does he look at me like that?
If someone had told me that shopping for clothes could be a traumatic experience, emotionally confusing and potentially dangerous for my cardiovascular health, I would have laughed. But here I was, sitting on the leather seat of Ethan Pierce's car, trying not to look like a nervous teenager going on her first date, while my brain repeatedly screamed that this was work, just work, definitely only professional work and nothing more. Spoiler, my brain is a terrible liar. The Luxury Plaza shopping center appeared ahead like a gleaming temple dedicated to the god of consumerism, all shiny glass and imposing facade that practically screamed, if you have to ask the price, you don't belong here. Ethan parked the car with that casual ease of someone accustomed to expensive things, and I got out trying not to look like an imposter dressed in my simple jeans and basic blouse. I've never been to this mall, I admitted, looking at the entrance with a mix of fascination and terror, like when you see a lion at the zoo and are impressed but also aware that it could kill you. It's expensive, but it has the best stores, Ethan responded, locking the car. Let's go to the men's store first. I need a new suit. Okay, I agreed, following him like a lost duckling following its mother duck. Except the mother duck in this scenario was a 6'1" billionaire CEO who walked like he owned the universe. Maybe he did. What did I know? The Gentleman's Kodam store was exactly the type of establishment you'd expect to find in a luxury mall. All dark mahogany, soft and dramatic lighting, and that smell of expensive leather mixed with men's cologne that probably cost more than my monthly salary. An elegant salesman, in a suit that looked like it had been sewn by perfectionist angels, approached with that professional smile that screams, I earn generous commission. Mr. Pierce, what a pleasure to have you here. The salesman practically radiated calculated enthusiasm. Do you need something specific today? Suit for a formal wedding. Something striking, Ethan said in that business voice he used when he wanted fast and efficient results. We have perfect pieces for the occasion. This way, please. The salesman gestured dramatically to a section of the store as if revealing ancient treasures instead of expensive clothes. I followed behind them, feeling completely out of place among mannequins that probably cost more than my old car. Ethan began analyzing the options with that concentration he used for everything, from reading financial reports to choosing which coffee to have at breakfast. The salesman brought 2 suits, placing them side by side with reverence. Dark gray suit, deemed classic, elegant, and safe. Navy blue suit, which was more modern, bold, and eye-catching. Ethan picked up the gray first, analyzing the fabric with fingers that knew quality when they saw it. Then, to my complete surprise, he turned to me. "What do you think?" I blinked, processing that he was really asking my opinion. Me? I don't know much about men's fashion, I started, but he cut me off with that look that meant, I asked, so answer. I sighed internally and analyzed the options honestly, because if he wanted an opinion, he was going to get a complete opinion. Which do you think is better? This gray or... He picked up the navy blue. This blue? I studied both, my mind organizing pros and cons automatically because I can't turn off my analytical brain even when I'm sleeping. The navy blue brings out your eyes more, but the gray is more traditional and safe. Silence. Ethan looked at me with a strange expression, something between surprise and something else I couldn't identify. You noticed the color of my eyes? Shit. My brain went into panic mode, but my mouth, traitorous as always, responded with false tranquility. Just an objective observation, Mr. Pierce. Part of being efficient is paying attention to details. He almost smiled. Almost. And that almost did strange things to my cardiovascular system that I was definitely going to pretend didn't happen. I'll try on both. Wait here, of course, I replied, sitting in a leather armchair that probably cost more than 3 months' rent, and tried to look casual instead of a woman having an existential crisis about having noticed her boss's eye color. Ethan came out of the fitting room in the gray suit, and my brain simply stopped working for 3 complete seconds. He looked good. Very good. The kind of good that should be illegal, or at least come with a safety warning, like, caution, may cause heart palpitations and inappropriate thoughts about your employer. So? He asked, turning slightly so I could see the complete fit, and I had to remind myself to breathe, because apparently that was no longer automatic. It looks good, I managed to say, keeping my voice neutral with superhuman effort. An elegant, classic, just good. He arched an eyebrow, and there was a trace of amusement in his eyes that I rarely saw. It looks very good, Mr. Pierce, I corrected, because apparently he needed specific validation, and who was I to deny it? He went back to the fitting room, and I took the opportunity to take several deep breaths and remind myself that this was work, just work, nothing but professional work, and definitely didn't involve noticing how that gray suit accentuated his shoulders or how the cut enhanced. Stop now, Mia. Then Ethan came out in the navy blue suit and my brain simply gave up functioning completely. If the gray was very good, the navy blue was, dear God, this should be a crime. The color really brought out the gray-blue eyes in an almost unfair way. The modern cut enhanced every line of his body, and he looked like he'd walked straight out of a men's fashion magazine for impossibly attractive men. This one's better, I said, before I could censor myself, and my voice came out lower than intended. Better how? Ethan approached, and I swear he was doing it on purpose, testing some crazy theory about making employees lose the ability to form coherent sentences. More striking, I responded, forcing my brain back to professional mode. Like you asked. Definitely more memorable. He looked in the mirror, then at me, and there was something in his expression I couldn't completely decipher. You have good taste. Thank you, I murmured, and mentally added, surviving shopping with extremely attractive boss to my list of skills not mentioned on my resume. Ethan bought the navy blue, and after paying an amount that would probably finance my food for 6 months, we headed to the women's store, and that's when things got really interesting. Elegance was everything the name suggested. Luxurious, intimidating, and definitely not the kind of place where girls with a housekeeper's salary casually walked in. The saleswoman, elegant in a black suit that probably cost more than my car, analyzed us with a look that lingered exactly 2 seconds longer on me than would be polite. Can I help you? She asked, and there was a slightly condescending tone that my I'm being judged radar picked up immediately. Yes, we need a dress for a formal event, evening wedding. Ethan responded with that natural authority that made saleswomen completely change their attitude. The woman looked at me again, clearly noticing my simple clothes, and smiled with forced professionalism. I understand. What kind of style does the lady prefer? I had absolutely zero familiarity with luxury fashion. My wardrobe consisted of gray uniforms, basic jeans, and a few blouses bought on sale. Asking me to choose a gala dress style was like asking a fish to choose a bicycle. I don't know, I admitted, feeling the discomfort grow. Something appropriate? Of course. She dragged out the word with that tone that meant, of course you don't know, poor thing. And I felt like shoving my professional efficiency down her throat. I'll bring options. When she walked away, I turned to Ethan with discomfort, written in neon on my forehead. Ethan. Mr. Pierce, I don't belong in places like this. Why not? He seemed genuinely confused, as if the idea of someone feeling out of place in a luxury store was an alien concept. Because I'm a housekeeper who wears a gray uniform every day, I responded with that brutal honesty that sometimes escapes when I'm nervous. This is another world, like Narnia, but with absurd prices. Ethan looked at me in a way that made my heart do that annoying thing of speeding up again. You're more than a gray uniform, Mia. And there it went. There went my ability to breathe normally again. Thank you, I murmured, because what else could I say when my boss had just looked at me as if he was really seeing me for the first time? The saleswoman returned with 5 dresses, each more intimidating than the last. Vibrant red that practically screamed, look at me. Basic black that screamed, no imagination. Light pink that screamed, this doesn't suit you. Royal blue that screamed, interesting, but no. Emerald green that didn't scream. It whispered, and the whisper said beautiful things. You can try them on in the fitting room there, the saleswoman indicated, and I took all 5 carefully like someone holding items that cost more than 3 monthly salaries. Alone in the fitting room, I tried on each dress with the seriousness of someone on a military mission. Red dress, too flashy. I looked like another person, and not in a good way. Next, black dress. Absolutely boring because I looked like a fancy waitress. Definitely not. Pink dress. I looked like I was going to a quinceañera. Ridiculous. So, next again, royal blue dress. Pretty, fits well, but something was missing. Almost, but not quite. Emerald green dress. I put it on and looked in the mirror, stopped breathing. The V-neckline was elegant without being excessive. The light sleeves framed my shoulders perfectly. The fitted waist created curves I didn't know I had, and the flowing skirt to the ankle made me look like a princess from a fairy tale. The lace details on the back were discreet but sophisticated, and the color made my green eyes practically glow. Wow, I whispered to my reflection, almost not recognizing the woman in the mirror. This was the dress. But a mischievous idea crossed my mind. Ethan had seen me in a gray uniform for 2 years. He saw me as the efficient and invisible employee. Showing him the dress now would take away all the surprise from the event, and some part of me, a small but insistent part, wanted to see his reaction when he saw me transformed for the first time. I left the fitting room back in normal clothes, and Ethan stood up from the armchair where he was waiting. Did you try them all on? He asked, expectation clear in his voice. Yes, I confirmed, keeping my expression neutral. And, aren't you going to show me? There was genuine curiosity in his eyes, and something more that seemed almost anxious. I prefer it to be a surprise for the event, I responded, and there was definitely a trace of mischief in my voice that I didn't bother to hide. Ethan blinked, processing. Surprise? Don't you want your girlfriend to be striking? The element of surprise helps, I argued with impeccable logic, and was definitely enjoying this more than I should. He laughed. A low, genuine sound I'd never heard in 2 years, and that did absolutely ridiculous things to my nervous system. You're right. So, which one did you choose? I turned to the saleswoman with a victorious smile. The emerald green, please. Excellent choice, she responded. All previous condescension evaporated in the face of Ethan's credit card. Do you need shoes? Accessories? Ethan asked, and I realized I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't considered that, I admitted, my meticulous planning failing embarrassingly. Let's choose, he said, and there was something almost amused in the way he took control of the situation. The next hour was a blur of expensive shoes, tiny purses, and delicate jewelry. We chose nude heels that made me question my basic motor skills, a small discreet purse that could barely fit a cell phone, and simple silver earrings that were elegant without being ostentatious. Ethan paid for everything without hesitation, swiping the card with the same ease I used to buy bread at the bakery. In the car, heading back to the mansion, I tried to process everything. Thank you for everything. I'll return it all carefully after the event. You don't need to return it. It's yours, Ethan said, keeping his eyes on the road. Mr. Pierce, all of this cost more than 3 months of my salary. I started to protest. because accepting so much generosity was uncomfortable in ways I couldn't explain. And you're saving me from public humiliation. He cut me off firmly. It's the least I can do. Still, I insisted, because my stubborn pride didn't know when to stop. He looked at me at the traffic light, and there was something intense in that look that made my stomach flip. Mia, accept the gift without arguing, okay? My heart did that ridiculous thing of speeding up again. Okay. The silence that followed was comfortable in a strange way, as if we'd crossed some invisible line between boss and employee to something closer to, what? Friends, partners in crime in a fake girlfriend operation. Can I ask you something personal? Ethan broke the silence, his voice hesitant in a way it rarely was. Depends on the question, I responded, cautious. Why do you need $5,000 so urgently? I hesitated. Personal information wasn't something I shared easily, but something about the way he asked, without judgment, just genuine curiosity, made me answer. My mother had a stroke last month. The treatment generated a large hospital debt, and my salary covers the basics, but not the extras. Guilt crossed his face so quickly I almost missed it, and I didn't know. Why would you? I shrugged, trying to keep my tone light. I don't mix personal life with work. But I should have asked, he insisted, and there was something almost vulnerable in his voice. You've worked for me for 2 years, and I do my job well, I cut in gently. You don't need to know my life for me to be efficient. I want to know. The words came out firm, definitive. I looked at him, surprised. Why? Because you're not just the maid, Mia. He paused, searching for words. Important. My heart was having a complete attack now. Important to the functioning of the house. Yes, that's not what I meant, he murmured. But we arrived at the mansion before I could ask what exactly he meant. We got out of the car in a silence loaded with unspoken things, expensive shopping bags in our hands, and a strange tension in the air that didn't exist before. Something had changed that afternoon, something subtle but significant, and as I went up to my room with the emerald green dress in my hands, all I could think about was the expression on his face when he said I was important. Important. Not the efficient maid or the reliable employee. Important. That was the word used, and my traitorous heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was more than just work. Chapter 3. Preparation and Perception.
I thought I knew everything about my life until I started seeing her.
Ethan.
The 5 days between shopping and the wedding were the strangest of my professional life. And considering I'd just agreed to pretend to be my billionaire boss's girlfriend for $5,000, that was saying a lot. But it wasn't the crazy agreement that was driving me insane. It was the way Ethan Pierce had started looking at me. And when I say looking, I'm not talking about that distant look of, you exist in the same space as me, that he'd used for 2 years. I'm talking about looking, like seeing, like noticing, like making my brain panic every time I walked into a room and found those gray-blue eyes fixed on me with an intensity that didn't exist before. This was definitely the emerald green dress's fault. It had to be. Somehow, buying expensive clothes had activated some mental switch in him that transformed the invisible maid into a visible person, and I didn't know how to feel about it. Lie. I knew exactly how to feel, but I was in deep denial because acknowledging these feelings would be like opening Pandora's box, except instead of the world's evils, it would be releasing stupid butterflies in my stomach that had nothing better to do. Day 1 after shopping started normal. Breakfast, tray, gray uniform, hair tied in a bun so tight it could cause a headache. I walked into the dining room with my usual efficiency, placed the cup next to Ethan, and was about to leave when I noticed something strange. He was looking at me. Not the quick, thanks for the coffee, look, but that kind of contemplative look people use when they're really paying attention to something for the first time. And it was making me extremely uncomfortable in ways I didn't want to analyze. Any problem, Mr. Pierce? I asked, mentally checking if I'd stained my uniform with something, or if my hair had finally rebelled against the tyrannical bun. No problem, he responded, but kept looking, and I swear I saw his eyes focus on my mouth for half a second before he quickly looked away. I left the room with professional dignity, but inside I was like, what just happened? In huge neon letters. In the hallway, I ran into Mr. Chen, who was talking to the new gardener, and when I smiled at him in automatic greeting, I noticed Ethan still watching me from the dining room. He was looking at me, at my smile, as if he'd noticed something he'd never seen before. Later, Mr. Chen casually told me I had a cute dimple when I smiled. Dimple. I had a dimple. Since when? Since always, apparently. But no one had ever paid enough attention to comment, and somehow, I knew Ethan had noticed too. Day 2 was worse, or better, or something in between that my confused brain couldn't categorize adequately. I was in the library organizing books, because books out of order cause me existential anxiety when I noticed some volumes were on the highest shelf, completely out of chronological order. And that was unacceptable. So, naturally, I went up on my tiptoes, stretched my arm as far as possible, and tried to reach that stubborn volume of Greek philosophy that was between modern economics books, as if it belonged there. Need help? Ethan's voice behind me almost made me fall from the imaginary ladder I was creating with my legs. I turned, still on my tiptoes, holding the shelf to balance. I can get it, thanks. You're going to break your neck, he said, and there was something almost amused in his voice. Let me get it. He approached, and suddenly there was very little space between us. Very little, like I can feel his body heat. Little. He extended his arm above mine, easily reaching the book I was struggling to get. And in the process, our fingers touched, and something happened. It wasn't dramatic like an explosion or fireworks, but it was definitely something, a kind of gentle electric shock, like that static when you touch someone after walking on carpet, except it was more intense and made my heart skip beats alarmingly. From Ethan's wide eyes, he felt it too. I pulled my hand away like I'd touched hot iron, breathing faster than normal for a situation that only involved getting a book. Sorry, sir, I murmured, taking the volume from his hands carefully to avoid touching again. No problem, he said, but his voice was rougher, and he stood there for 3 complete seconds before stepping away, running his hand through his hair in that gesture I was beginning to recognize as a sign he was processing something complex. After he left, I stared at my hand as if it had betrayed me, which technically it had. Hands shouldn't cause electric shocks when touching bosses. That wasn't proper professional protocol. Day 3. I called Ava because my brain was juggling information I didn't want to process, and I needed advice from someone who wasn't myself. How's the prep for the fake event going? Ava asked with that irritating excitement of someone watching a live soap opera. Normal. It's just work, I responded automatically. But even to me, it sounded unconvincing. And then you still don't feel anything for him. She dragged out anything, in a way that made it clear she didn't believe me one bit. Long pause. Very long. Embarrassingly long. Mia? Ava insisted when the silence stretched beyond reasonable. I respect him, I finally responded, which was technically true but also completely insufficient to describe the confusion I was feeling. That wasn't an answer, she pointed out with the surgical precision of a devil's advocate. I sighed, defeated. Ava, I don't have time for complicated feelings. I have bills to pay, a mother recovering in the hospital, and a job I need to keep. But you do feel something, right? She wasn't going to give up. Never gave up. I closed my eyes, admitting out loud for the first time. I don't know. When he looks at me lately, I get weird. That's called attraction, sis. Ava said this as if she were explaining basic math to a 5-year-old. It can't be attraction, I protested weakly. He's my boss, my employer, the person who signs my paycheck. Hearts don't care about corporate hierarchy. She responded with that wisdom of someone who reads a lot of romance and thinks they understand everything about life. This is ridiculous, I murmured, but my conviction was cracking like old porcelain. If you say so, Ava hummed, clearly not believing, and we changed the subject before she started planning an imaginary wedding again. But after hanging up, I lay looking at my bedroom ceiling, processing the word I'd been avoiding. Attraction. Was that it? Was that what made my heart race when he entered the room? That made my breathing falter when he smiled? That made that electric shock when our fingers touched? Problem, I whispered to the indifferent universe. This is definitely a problem. Day 4. Ethan went out to meet Noah, and I knew because I heard him tell the driver the bar's address. Not that I was paying attention or anything, just professional efficiency of knowing where my employer was. Totally normal. My brain was getting terrible at rationalizing things. What I didn't know was the conversation they were having. But Mr. Chen, who seemed to have an information network like a domestic FBI, told me later that Noah had called asking if Ethan was acting strange lately. Apparently, the conversation went something like this. Noah asked how the fake girlfriend plan was going. Ethan responded, "It was fine, I guess." Noah pointed out he'd been acting strange since he decided this. Ethan denied being strange. Noah insisted yes, that he kept staring at nothing, thoughtful. Ethan admitted he'd realized he knew nothing about me. Noah asked why suddenly he wanted to know. Ethan got defensive, saying it was natural to want to know people who work for you. And then came the bomb. According to Mr. Chen, who heard from Noah, who told everything because apparently privacy is a relative concept when your best friend is having an existential crisis. You're starting to see her differently. Ethan denied it, called the idea ridiculous. But Noah, who'd known him for 15 years, just said, "I know when something's changed," and apparently something had changed. When Ethan came back that night, He looked at me crossing the hallway with grocery bags, and there was something different in his expression, something softer, more aware. I pretended not to notice and continued with my work, but my heart was playing jazz drums in my chest. Day 5 was when everything got too intense to keep pretending it was just work. It was 2 a.m, and I couldn't sleep. Worry about my mother, anxiety about the wedding the next day, confusion about my feelings that refused to remain categorized as professional. Everything was creating the perfect storm of insomnia, so I went down to the kitchen to make tea, because tea fixes everything, or at least that's what my grandmother always said. I was putting water on to boil when I heard footsteps. Ethan came down the stairs, messy hair, wearing a simple t-shirt and pajama pants, looking more human and less CEO than I'd ever seen. "Mia, you're still awake." Genuine surprise in his voice. "Couldn't sleep, was making tea," I explained, trying not to notice how attractive he looked in pajamas, which was ridiculous and inappropriate. Want some?" "I do, thanks." We sat at the kitchen island, and there was something surrealistically intimate about being there at 2 a.m, just the two of us and steaming cups of tea, as if we'd crossed into an alternate dimension where hierarchies didn't exist, and we were just 2 people having insomnia together. "Why can't you sleep?" he asked, blowing on the tea to cool it. "Didn't worry about my mom," I responded honestly, because 2 a.m. seemed like the wrong time for polite lies. "And you?" "Thinking about Saturday." He looked at the cup as if it contained the universe's secrets. "Nervous about the wedding?" I asked gently, stepping into personal territory with the care of someone walking through a minefield. "About seeing Victoria happy while He paused, searching for words. "Pretend to be fine." Something about the vulnerable way he said that made my heart squeeze. "But you are fine. The company recovered. You're successful. Life goes on." "Professionally, yes," he admitted, turning the cup between his hands. "But personally, I'm a lonely workaholic who doesn't even notice the people around him." "You've noticed me lately," I blurted before thinking, and immediately wanted to shove the words back in my mouth. He looked up, meeting my eyes. "Have I? Shit. No going back now. In the library, at breakfast, this afternoon when I was in the garden, I felt you looking." Heavy silence loaded with unspoken things. Then he spoke, voice low and intense. "I started noticing things I ignored for 2 years." "Like what?" My voice came out whispered, and I didn't know if I wanted him to answer or not. "Like how you smile differently for Mr. Chen and for me. How you organize everything without me asking. How you—" He paused, eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made my stomach flip. Matter more than I realized. My heart was having a complete cardiac arrest. "I do my job well. It's natural for you to notice efficiency." "It's not about efficiency, Mia." He said my name in a way he'd never said it before, loaded with something I couldn't name, but that made every nerve ending in my body light up. The air between us was so charged I could feel electricity, and suddenly the kitchen seemed too small, too hot, too intense. I stood up quickly, almost knocking over the cup, fleeing from that intensity because I didn't know what to do with it. "I should sleep. Saturday's going to be a long day," I said quickly, already backing toward the door. "Mia, wait." He started to stand, but I was already leaving. "Good night, Mr. Pierce." I practically ran to my room, closed the door, and leaned against it, breathing like I'd run a marathon. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears, and my hands were trembling slightly. "It's not about efficiency, Mia." The words echoed in my head, loaded with meaning I was too afraid to unpack. Because if it wasn't about efficiency, what was it about? And more importantly, what was I feeling that made my heart race every time he looked at me? I lay in bed, looking at the ceiling, and finally admitted out loud in the darkness of my room, "I'm in trouble. Serious trouble." Because ignoring feelings for your boss was one thing when he saw you as furniture. But when he started to really see you, when he looked at you like Ethan had looked at me in that kitchen, that was completely different territory. Dangerous. Emotionally complicated. And tomorrow I'd have to pretend to be his girlfriend for hours, touch him, smile at him, act like we were a couple in love. How was I going to survive that when I could barely survive a 2 major conversation about tea? "Trouble," I repeated to the pillow. "Definitely trouble." And for the first time, I wondered if $5,000 was worth the emotional confusion I was about to face. Chapter 4. The Wedding and the Revelation.
What if this isn't pretend anymore, and I'm the one who gets hurt?
If I thought agreeing to be a fake girlfriend was the worst decision of my life, I was wrong. The worst decision was letting Ava into my room on the morning of the wedding with a makeup kit that looked like a war arsenal and a maniacal smile that screamed, "You're leaving here unrecognizable or I'll die trying." "You're shaking," Ava accused, holding my face with the firmness of a determined professional makeup artist while applying foundation with surgical precision. "I'm not," I lied shamelessly, my hands proving otherwise with visible trembling I couldn't control even if my life depended on it. You are. Nervous about what? I thought it was just work, remember? She hummed with that I know everything tone that younger sisters master perfectly and use as a psychological weapon. I sighed, defeated for the 10th time that morning. I think I feel something for him. Ava. Finally you admit it. She almost shoved the blush brush in my eye from sheer excitement. Sis, I knew it. From the first time you mentioned him, I knew. But I can't feel anything. He's my boss and this is temporary work. And then everything goes back to normal. And I need the job and the stability. And if this goes wrong, I lose everything. I went into full verbal panic mode, listing potential catastrophes like someone listing grocery items. What if it doesn't go back? Ava asked with devastating simplicity, applying mascara with steady hands while my world philosophically crumbled. It has to go back. I need the job, the bills paid, the organized life, I argued, but my conviction was cracking like old glass. Sometimes life isn't about stability, Mia, she said with the wisdom of someone who's 19 and watches a lot of romance on Netflix. For someone with bills to pay, it is, I retorted, but even I wasn't believing my own words anymore. 40 minutes later, Ava turned me to the mirror with the drama of a makeover show host. Hair down in waves I didn't know my hair could do, elegant but natural makeup enhancing green eyes, and that damn emerald green dress that transformed me into a princess from a fairy tale. I look like a different person, I whispered, half in shock at my own reflection. You look like you, without hiding, Ava corrected, already getting emotional. Now go out there and break that man. Downstairs, Ethan was having his own silent breakdown. Impeccable navy blue suit, perfectly arranged hair, but the expression of a man about to face a firing squad. He compulsively checked his watch, adjusted his tie for the 1,000th time. Young Ethan, calm down, Mr. Chen suggested with the infinite patience of someone who'd seen this movie before. I'm not nervous, Ethan lied, with the conviction of a corrupt politician caught taking money on video. You are. I wonder why. Mr. Chen had that tone that made it clear he already knew all the answers. It's just the idea of seeing Victoria, Ethan tried to rationalize, or seeing Miss Mia. Mr. Chen cut straight to the point like an experienced surgeon. Ethan froze completely. You noticed that you're finally seeing what's always been here? Yes, young Ethan. I'm old, not blind. Mr. Chen smiled with irritating wisdom. It's inappropriate. She works for me. Ethan listed rational objections that sounded weak even to himself. The heart doesn't care about what's appropriate or not. Young Ethan. Sound of high heels coming down the stairs. Both looked, and Ethan Pierce's world simply stopped. Mia appeared and stunning was an insufficient word. Emerald green dress shining, loose hair framing her face like a work of art. Confident but nervous posture. Absolutely perfect. Ethan forgot how to form words, how to breathe, how to exist. Does the dress look okay? If it's not good, I can, Mia started. Insecurity clear. Ethan tried, failed, tried again. Speechless. Mia, you're stunning. Mr. Chen helped, smiling. The word the young man seeks is stunning. Thank you, Mr. Chen, Mia thanked, but eyes fixed on Ethan waiting for his reaction. Sorry for staring, but you're too beautiful. I didn't expect, Ethan finally managed to speak, voice rough. Didn't expect what? Mia asked, heart racing. Didn't expect you to be so perfect. The words came out loaded with raw truth. Heavy silence. Electric. Intense. I'll get the car, Mr. Chen announced, exiting discreetly. We should go, Mia whispered, fleeing from the intensity. Ethan approached, took her hand gently. Before that, I need to say, thank you for doing this. And you really are beautiful. It's just expensive clothes and makeup. Mia tried to minimize. No, it's you. It was always you. I was just too blind to see, Ethan said with an intensity that made her knees weaken. Ethan, his name came out like a plea. Sorry, this wasn't the time for that. He released her hand reluctantly. Shall we? The arrival at the wedding was like a visual spectacle. Ethan got out of the car, opened the door for Mia like a perfect gentleman, offered his arm. She accepted, and everyone looked. From afar, Victoria saw, and her jaw locked with visible envy. At the reception, Ethan didn't let go of Mia, hand on her waist, possessive, protective. He introduced her. This is Mia, my girlfriend. Victoria approached with a bright fake smile. Ethan, darling, and who is your friend? Girlfriend, not friend, Ethan corrected, pulling Mia closer. Mia, this is Victoria. Pleasure. Congratulations on the wedding, Mia said politely, ignoring the venomous look. Thank you. How long have you two been together? Victoria asked, analyzing Mia from top to bottom with poorly disguised envy. Long enough to know she's special, Ethan responded, looking at Mia in a way that made her stomach flip. Victoria smiled with venom. How romantic. Enjoy the party. During the event, Ethan didn't let go of Mia, hand on her waist, fingers intertwined, always touching. They talked naturally, laughed together, chemistry visible to everyone. It seemed so real that Mia was starting to forget it was pretend. Noah approached with an analytical look. Man, are you guys that convincing, or is it real? Ethan looked at Mia. I don't know anymore. You're in love, Noah declared. Impossible. She's my employee, Ethan protested weakly. So what? You look at her like she's the air you breathe. A slow song started. Ethan offered his hand. Dance with me? I don't know how to dance well. Mia hesitated. I'll lead. Voice firm, reassuring. Dance floor. His hand on her waist, firm and intimate. Her hand on his shoulder, trembling, very close, dangerously close, looking into each other's eyes. Mia, I need to confess something, Ethan whispered, voice low and intense. What? Her heart raced. Today isn't pretend for me. Air fled from her lungs. What are you saying? That I spent 2 years blind, but now I see you, and I can't stop seeing. Ethan, this is just the moment. Tomorrow you'll go back to seeing me as an employee. Tears threatened. What if I don't want to go back? What if I want to keep seeing you like this? Like what? Her voice broke. Like the woman I want to really know. Not as an employee. What about my job? My stability? If this goes wrong, I lose everything. Real fear in her voice. I won't let you lose anything, I promise. Can I steal the groom for a dance? Tradition, Victoria interrupted. Fake smile, but determined. You have a groom, Victoria, Ethan said, irritated. Just one dance. For old times' sake. She pulled Ethan, separating them. Mia stood alone on the floor, watching them dance. Victoria too close, talking in his ear, him visibly uncomfortable, and something broke inside Mia. She's beautiful, rich, from his world. And me, a maid in a borrowed dress, she thought, and left the party. Garden. Mia alone, breathing deeply, processing everything. Ethan appeared running. Mia, you ran off. I needed air. Victoria was being inappropriate. I got away from her as fast as... It's not about Victoria, Mia exploded. It's about us, about the fact that I work for you, that tomorrow I go back to the gray uniform, that today isn't real. It's real for me, Ethan yelled back. You're confused because you saw me dressed up, but I'm not this. I'm the Mia who serves coffee. Ethan grabbed her face with both hands. You're the Mia who takes care of me without me noticing, who makes me laugh, who's kind to everyone, who's beautiful with or without an expensive dress. And yes, I was an idiot who took 2 years to see it, but I see now. What if you get tired? Like Victoria got tired. Tears fell. Victoria left me for money. You agreed to help me, despite the money. You're everything she never was. I'm scared. Me too. But give me a chance to prove this is real. Internal struggle. Then, okay, one chance. Can I kiss you? You can. The kiss was everything. 2 years of unrecognized tension, denied feelings, ignored attraction. Real, intense, perfect. When they separated, both were breathless, and everything had changed. Chapter 5, After the Fairy Tale.
I paid for one night, but what if I'm asking for a lifetime?
Monday after the wedding was strange on levels that defy description. I woke up, put on my gray uniform, pulled my hair into the usual bun, and when I went downstairs to make coffee, I found Ethan in the kitchen with the expression of a man having a severe existential crisis. Good morning, Mr. Pierce, I greeted automatically, and he made a face like he'd just been stabbed. Don't call me Mr. Pierce after Saturday, he practically groaned, running his hand through his hair in despair. And technically, I'm still your employee, I started, but he cut me off. What if you didn't work here? I blinked, processed. What? What if I helped you get a better job, somewhere else, and then we could date without conflict? He threw this out like it was an obvious solution to a complex problem. My pride woke up at full force. You want to fire me? No, I want to free you so we can be together. He was panicking. Dramatic gestures included. What if I don't want to leave? I like working here. I crossed my arms defensively. Then how do we make this work? Ethan practically yelled, frustration evident. Mr. Chen chose this moment to enter, calmly, as if dramatic morning arguments were routine. Young people, you're overcomplicating this. Try actually dating first, then decide on logistics. We both looked at him like he'd just revealed the universe's secret. Go out to dinner, get to know each other outside of here, see if it's real without job pressure. Then decide next steps. He continued with the patience of a teacher explaining basic math. That makes sense, I admitted. It really does, Ethan agreed, looking at me. So, dinner tonight? Tonight works. The following weeks were a whirlwind of discoveries. Date 1 at a casual restaurant where we talked about childhood, dreams, fears, and discovered we both hated cilantro with irrational passion. Date 2 at the movies where Ethan pretended to like a silly romantic comedy because I was laughing, and I pretended not to notice him looking at me more than at the screen. Date 3 at the art museum where he discovered my secret passion for impressionism, and I discovered he knew surprisingly a lot about Van Gogh. Each date brought us closer. Each conversation revealed layers. Each touch made it harder to imagine going back to before. He's amazing when he's not just my boss. I confessed to Ava on the phone after the 5th date. He's funny, kind, vulnerable. You're in love, Ava screamed with the enthusiasm of a cheerleader. I am, I finally admitted, smiling like an idiot. Ethan had a similar conversation with Noah. She makes me want to be better. She sees beyond the CEO. She sees me. You love her, Noah declared. Completely, Ethan admitted without hesitation. 2 months later, I made a decision. I accepted Ethan's help to get a position at an art gallery, fulfilling a dream I'd buried under bills and responsibilities. I resigned from the mansion, maintaining precious friendship with Mr. Chen, and started a new life, official relationship. No hierarchies, just the two of us. 6 months later, I was at my first exhibition as assistant curator, surrounded by art I loved, doing work that fulfilled me. Ethan showed up, pride evident in his eyes. You're incredible, he said, pulling me into a hug. Thank you for believing in me. I always believed. I just took a while to show it. He paused, took a deep breath. Actually, I have something for you. Ethan, you've already given me so much. And then he knelt, right there, in the middle of the gallery, with visitors watching. What are you doing? My heart stopped. I paid you $5,000 for one night as a fake girlfriend. It was the best investment of my life because it gave me you. He opened a small box. A ring sparkled. Marry me. This is crazy. I laughed and cried simultaneously. It's love. Will you marry me? Yes! Obviously, yes! Applause erupted. He kissed me, and everything was perfect. 1 year later, the Pierce mansion was ours. I walked in with coffee, mischievous smile. Your coffee, Mr. Pierce? Ethan pulled me onto his lap, laughing. Mrs. Pierce, you're not an employee anymore, but I still make better coffee than you. True. He kissed me softly. Thank you. For what? For accepting that crazy proposal. For giving me a chance. For everything. Thank you for finally seeing me. I see you every day now, and I still fall more in love. Romantic? Only with you. Mr. Chen passed by, smiling. I told you, the best things are too close to see, and he was right. Sometimes you need an absurd proposal, an emerald green dress, and $5,000 to discover that love was there all along, waiting, invisible like a maid in a gray uniform, until finally, you see. And when you see, you never forget.